Hey, everybody. I'm not going to be on here long today, but I've definitely got some things to say. And as you can see, I'm wearing my lovely fundy jumper that I found I still had from my years in fundamentalism. Now, how did some of my clothes get put aside that long? Well, a couple of things. I was told with this one, it was too prideful. I'm using flashy material and it was just not suitable. So this one got put aside. I totally forgot I had it. It was shoved in a box. Then it got to Costa Rica. And now I wear it every now and then because it's super comfortable, especially on a day like today where the Rica de Ver volcano has erupted, sent all a few little plumes of, and I'm spending a lot of time laying on the floor crying because my asthma is so bad from the sulfur fumes. So the downside of living in paradise is being exposed to fumes of the volcano. Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Titcomer. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering. I wrote about fundamentalists, quiverful, the evangelical world, everything religious oriented that was off the bubble, like being forced to wear a cotton potato sack. Okay, do all the YouTube things, hit like, subscribe, whatever. Don't bully anybody. This is all my opinions. Um, let's not even be rude to each other if we can avoid it, because that kind of sucks too. Okay, so you have to excuse me. I'm fresh out of the shower, washed my hair, washed my face, no makeup, no nothing. I'm just coming on here hot today. Why? Because I have to talk a little bit about Chris Hansen. Hey, Beth Idol. Apparently, Spiracy has been talking to Wes Most. I think his channel is something like Most Host, and she's been attempting to get him more than Chris Hansen, but Chris Hansen interested in doing a deep dive on Steve McRae. I have laughed more over that than anything I've laughed over in a long time. Why? Well, a couple of things. And all of them have to do with Chris Hansen. Now, you guys know I am a baby boomer. I am an old as F-U-C-K. Hey, Megan. Hey, Bliss. I'm old too. I'm old as hell. I am a boomer. So when somebody says, okay, boomer, to me, I always say, yeah, and this boomer is out spending your friggin' inheritance. So, ha 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 ha. I always do that when I run into a okay boomer type. Well, and here I am calling Chris a boomer and saying, okay, boomer. This boomer is saying, okay, boomer. This is where we get kind of weird. I started doing, I hate this term, deep dive on Chris last night and this morning because I've been laying up in that bed with asthma. It's been bad. It's been real bad. You can hear my voice. And Spiracy is asking for people to send her proof of various things that Steve has done. And this is in the middle of the Steve watching corn, PRON controversy, which I've gone and listened to the video because I was curious. The video between Aaron and Rennell and him, where they claim that there's moaning and corn sounds. I heard only one thing that could be described as a moan, and I'm not sure that's what it was. Number one. Number two, Steve is over 21. If he wants to watch corn, he's perfectly able to watch all the corn he wants. But if that was the kind of noises made in corn, I'm having a hard time buying that. I mean, I've seen enough corn in my lifetime. I don't like corn. I'm not a fan of it. Not at all of prawn, any of that. I think it's demeaning to women. But if you are a woman and you want to look at that, or you want to perform in it and you're not being trafficked or exploited or given drugs, and more power to you. Girl, got to holler for a dollar. Why is Chris Hansen so high up there in the heads of these people? He's not a good man at all. I guess this is notoriety from the show. Bliss, I'm about to examine that because they're all carrying on about Chris Hansen like he's a be-all and end-all. You know, Chris used to do these big To Catch a Predator things on NBC. Late at night, do all his, I'm Chris Hansen. take a seat sort of thing. And I never liked it because it looked to me like it was a setup. That I was like, how is no one having these things overturned? Because clearly this was some type of entrapment. Now, I'm not lining up with those guys. I think it's horrible what they're doing, looking for underage boys and girls to have sex with. That is awful. So while I wasn't a real big fan of what he was doing, at least he was exposing some of these guys to some type of justice. So I was content to live and let live, just let him do his thing. My husband and my son were incredibly enamored of this stupid show. Hey, Kentucky girl, they really loved his stupid shows. It was like, I just didn't see it because for me, watching this was just cringe. It was cringe, cringe, cringe. I was embarrassed for those guys. I started looking at it thinking it was entrapment, all of that. Hey, Kira. Yeah, just listening, fine. So I was not a fan of it. And then tragedy struck as a result, which is what I was afraid of all along. There was a man that killed himself after having been outed in one of these to catch a predator things. And that is the dark side of this. This guy killed himself, and that's pretty bad. Shortly thereafter, they didn't do any more of these to catch a predator. At least they didn't air any more of them. I don't know if they were not done or not anymore, but they weren't airing them any longer. And Chris Hansen popped up over other things in NBC News because he is a legitimate journalist. And I had no problem with that. Let him breathe in, breathe out, move on. And a sting operation happened to him, and he was outed as having an affair with a coworker, somebody else that worked for NBC, an NBC affiliate. Let me see, what year was this? I want to say this was 2009. This happened. 13, according to the article. He had been an employee of NBC News for over 20 years. But when you start dipping your wick into the company ink, the company is going to say, nope, no thanks, because it opens the company up to too many legal ramifications. So they let him go. Whether they fired him or they just ran out his contract or what happened. But Radar Online published photos of him making out with his mistress, who also worked for NBC. She worked for an NBC affiliate out of South Florida. 2 weeks after that, they canceled his contract and shooed him on along the way. And I love this any relation to the stripper? Who knew? So one of the things that somebody said was that not only was there a horrible double standard in play, but he had become part of the story. And that is unforgivable. If you were a journalist in any way, shape, or form, any halfway decent, legitimate journalist, you are not going to be able to be part of the story. The minute you start being part of the story and start inserting yourself, it becomes problematic and it becomes less about journalism and more about your ego. Now, we have seen various YouTubers that do that while claiming that they are also journalists. So, Chris didn't go on to another network. Nobody showed up to give him another network job. He did some pieces with Crime Watch Daily, which was a TV show that was on for a couple of years in the US. He also started developing some YouTube content, which that's when I started watching him again, because I was curious. First, he did the series on niacin. And if you don't know who niacin is, he is a YouTuber that was apparently groomed young women to have sex with him. And Discovery bought this documentary. Chris relied upon the investigative work of another YouTuber who turned out to be extremely problematic in his own weird ways. Oh, I'm looking for that guy's name. So he did, yeah. So he had this guy helping him out. Vincent Nicotra was the one that did the majority of the research. And Vincent was also extremely, extremely problematic. Hey, Ragenhild. So here you have Niacin, you have Vincent, you have all these other people, and you have Chris Hansen, who's problematic in and of himself. I'm getting the deets from my hubby right now. But Theo Vaughn, comedian and podcaster, invited Chris out to be his podcast and paid for a room. They got stuck with an enormous bill. I heard that too. He ran up the huge bill charging to his room. That's really horrible. And that's very typical, I understand, of Chris Hansen. So he sells this Niacin documentary, and it's riddled with inaccuracies, and it is problematic. I tried to watch the whole thing because our dear Catherine was squealing that she was on it for like 5 seconds. And that would have been part 3. I couldn't find part 3 anywhere. It has been pulled down. You might find part 1 and part 2, part 3 have not happened. So here's somebody that has problems, has had problems, lost a legitimate job as a journalist that he held for over 20 years, and now is trying to be internet famous. Now, too bad Chris just didn't stick with the To Catch a Predator, the TCAT series, because if he had done that, he could have made a mint on YouTube. There are people that are down for that kind of content. My husband has watched all of his YouTubes many times because of that. But no, he started straying into the world of the internet. And while that's not a problem if you know what you're doing, he, like me, is a boomer and he doesn't get the culture. The only reason that I get anything to do about the internet culture is I've been around on the internet a long time. I'm not a neophyte like he is, apparently. So he's hooking up with people who are not good. He's taken testimony from people who are problematic on several of his projects. Just look at the Jesse project, where he outed Jesse, infamous Red Rampage from the anti-KJ community, she's got her own problems. And the only thing that I hold really against her is that she was apparently sending nude photos to people who are underage, which is never right. I don't care who you are. All the other stuff she's done is pretty typical. We see this kind of behavior all the time on the internet. Just breathe in, breathe out, move on, and you find a creator you like to watch. You don't watch these S-weasels. You just stay away from them because they're so awful. Well, then, like I said, the Niacin thing was shot down in flames, even though it aired, because it was inaccurate as can be. So now we have Chris has hooked up with Wes Most, what a name. And they've done some other videos on various people, including Red Rampage and Jessie, however you want to know her. And like I said, not what I would call the biggest liar on the internet, not even the biggest fake victim on the internet. I would say a pretty low level. And who it was amusing to watch her rant and screech and carry on after the Chris Hansen interview, before we saw the interview. And she kept saying, oh, no. I am making the big league. Well, not really. Apparently, Uni feels sexually harassed because of skits. Oh, Uni, never change. Uni, be as stupid as you want to be. Because I am here for that. I am laughing at some of the things coming out of Uni's mouth. So now Uni and Spiracy have cooked up this. Steve was watching porn while streaming with Renelle and Aaron. And Aaron said something that just made me laugh so hard. She said, maybe that was my porn, which made me laugh because obviously it wasn't porn. And B, Steve had on a headset. How, if he was watching porn, how would the sounds of the porn come through his headset through this microphone? Somebody make that work, okay? Because I don't. I'm no doctor, obviously, but Mom will pay Jesse Chick is 60 million. Agreed. Agreed. I almost feel bad for her, but she's just incredibly vile. Yeah, that's how I feel about it, Chris. Nothing against Aaron or Renelle, but come on. Exactly. Exactly. I don't even have speakers. Yeah, you said that. He's such a drama queen. He is a drama queen. Molly Golightly says she's going after Uni. Not a huge Molly Golightly fan, but I'd like to see her go after him. Kentucky, same, same. Nicostra, Vincent Nicostra. If this was my mic, I really think it was Kino watching Vampire Diaries. That makes sense. I mean, really. It was just one, maybe quasi moan. I'm not even sure it was a moan. Drama queen. How sexist. I feel violated. Contact my lawyer. Oh, it's the greatest show on earth. You're right, Bliss. It's a great show. Million plus channels were taken advantage of. Yeah, they were. He did not credit people for their research, for the things they gave to him, to Hansen I'm talking about, and Vincent. So he lost FBI evidence. That's right. And so Hansen is a joke. He is a joke. He really, literally is a joke. He's right up there with KJ. I think he and KJ deserve each other. I'm just going to throw that out there. KJ, the books are really awesome. If you've ever read them, much different than the show. I have not. But they're on my list. Somebody suggested the other day the 5 Days of Memorial, the book on Katrina, and I started reading it, and I got as far as them having to euthanize the Siamese by trying to give it a shot in his heart, and I was like, oh, I'm out of here. I can't handle that level of anything. So Onision, yes, Onision. So now Westmost and AZ are saying that Chris Hansen is about to do his deep dive on Darling Steve here. Some people don't like Steve, and I can see why some people might take offense, because Steve, you are blunt, you know that. Not only are you blunt, but sometimes you come across as rather intellectual, and how people feel about being all intellectual on the internet. When you do that, you're going to automatically piss off a swath of people. It's just the way it is. Hey, Arctic Timberwolf. So they're saying they're going to do this deep dive, and they have this smoking gun of this audio of Steve watching corn on a live stream that I've laughed so hard over after listening to. And here's where it gets funny for Unirock. Uni is using this as, oh my God, fodder to push his whole narrative. And he's doing all these clickbaity titles like he's our dear Catherine Jr. It's just making me laugh. Just getting here. Hey, I hate peas. So I know Steve, okay? Love him or hate him, praise him or pillory him. He is not that guy. He is not the guy who's the criminal mastermind. He's been very open about his interactions with dear Catherine. As if I think there are maybe 5 true victims of Catherine. He's one and I am one. And there are some other ones. But beyond that, I don't know. I tried to contact Chris Hansen a long time ago about Dear Catherine and was told it was not a big enough issue to be looked at. Whatever. Okay, I always have. I am a smooth criminal. Yeah. Well, apparently Steve is a smooth criminal too. I must be too. So we're all I'm just enjoying this. I'm enjoying watching this. I'm enjoying watching the hand wringing and the Steve is going to go down. Chris Hansen's on the job. Chris Hansen has a million things that are problematic about him. And there's a reason why he's not working for a legitimate news organization any longer. Why he's squatting on the job. Chris Hansen has a million things that are problematic about him, and there's a reason why he's not working for a legitimate news organization any longer. Why he's squatting in some cheap ass looking apartment and doing videos on the internet. The internet. It just makes me laugh out loud when I hear them being so completely ridiculous and acting like Steve is the biggest criminal on the planet. Girl, please, not even close. Not even close to anything. So we're going to watch this. We're going to sit back and we are going to just laugh because this is all really silly. The silliest stuff I've seen in a long time. And we know in the Dear Catherine community that there is a lot of silliness to be had. So much. Today they were accusing Steve of having had a sexual predator, something to do with him, while turning a blind eye to the fact that Catherine interviewed Caleb Williams, who was a convicted SA, who was, his crimes were so egregious, the state of Illinois named him an official predator. And they don't do that with very many sexual offenses or offenders, but they did with him. He's considered a predator. It's just a hate mob mentality. If they get Chris to hate who they hate, then they love him. Bliss, that's exactly right. And I'm just sitting back, making popcorn, sitting back with my pinwheel flour. This Costa Rican doing some work for us made this for me yesterday because I was feeling so crappy with the asthma. Because the volcano let off some smoke, and I don't do well with that. If you feel this way about Chris Hansen, why did you go to him about KJ? Colleen, there's a reason, because I didn't know any of this beforehand. I knew none of this at all. This was when Chris was first on YouTube. I had done no research on him. I only knew him from To Catch a Predator, and I knew he was talking about different online predators. So I went to him. Since that time, I've taken a look at why he was fired from NBC. I've taken a look at what his reputation is. I've taken a look at some of the investigations he's done and how they've gone haywire and sideways. I thought that was celery. No, this is actually a leaf. You'll see, this is a leaf from some type of palm here, and it's been turned and twisted into a flower. People in Nicaragua and Costa Rica are extremely talented with these things. I've had people make these before and give it to me as like a bird and a dragon, all kinds of crazy things. And I always love these things. I think they're fabulous when someone gives me one. I always save it till it's too dried out and gross. So there's that. But Java Man, you're right. Some people are way too invested in this whole thing, and I don't think it's going to work out well. I think that if history repeats itself, if there's an investigation, it will just be poorly researched and sideways. Hansen cited Spiracy and Julie Virgo about Jesse. And this is after, well, it was filmed before Spiracy seemed to have lost her mind and flipped over to supporting KJ again and been part of the Unirock family. We know how I think about Unirock. He's just a joke. He's a joke with his vape in one hand and his little do-rag on his head and the stuff he does. That is how ferns look at, like when they are young and eatable. Edible. Yeah. Some of them here are edible. I wouldn't just start chomping on them here because some of them are very poisonous, some of the plants. One of the most fascinating books I have is an herbal book here for what you can use for medicine and what you can't and what it treats. Who gives a crap about Jesse? Holy cow, that is their content. I know. Why Jesse? There's so many worse people with huge platforms than poor Jesse, who's clearly not firing on all cylinders mentally. People were disappointed in the Tati lawsuit, but we all have to remember it is her time and resources. We have no standing in that. Exactly, Java Man. Exactly. We have no standing in any of that. We have no standing in what Todd Chrisley's trying to do, or 7M. We could stand on the sidelines and make popcorn and watch. But in reality, none of us have a stake in that at all. if she is Chris Hansen's content, just shows how downhill he's really gone. Bliss, exactly. That's what I thought when I started watching his piece. And then I started doing a little research into him because it had been so long. Like I said, the only thing I knew about him is my husband adored him for all of his To Catch a Predator content that he'd been doing. Not me. I got more stuff going on than that. I have a long-standing rule. I do not really go after people who are mentally unwell by no fault of their own, who just do stupid shit. Steve, I don't either. That's why I barely mentioned this woman at all. Jesse is not mentally well. Everyone, I think, realizes that. It's not hard to figure that out. I'm just going to throw this out here. If you are a woman and you're acting out that kind of sexually the way she seems to be, that's usually a pretty good indication that you are traumatized and were sexually abused yourself as a child. It's usually a really good, that's usually a red flag that pops up. And that's what I think when I hear that sort of thing. I like foraging. Most things in the woods are edible. Mashed acorns are yummy. Dried acorn make awesome flour, is my understanding. I'm tempted to try that sometime when I go to the States, because anything but wheat has got issues for me. And I'm allergic to everything under the sun. So what do I have to lose by trying acorns? So I don't know what's going to happen with this and Steve, but I think, Steve, I think you're sitting pretty. I think that whatever they dig up is going to be ridiculous, and it's going to be defamatory towards them, and it's going to expose them for what they are. If Jesse was my child, I'd be concerned for sure. Absolutely, Scorpio Joe. You might have to fight with the squirrels for the acorns. Yeah, that's very true. I may have to see if I can get acorn flour at the health food store here, because they have all kinds of oddball things. She was abused, I have no doubt, but she can't get details right, and her mind doesn't process details right. Her dad has verbally said she had abuse. I'm not surprised at all. I've done that with nuts. I've made nut flour. Almond flour is my go-to. It just is. It's my go-to. It's awesome if you're reacting to wheat. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today, segueing away from Chris Hansen, because I think he's got his own awful, is I want to talk just a hair about religious triggers, okay? Because I wanted to warn you, if you are dealing with spiritual abuse and you are struggling with that and you're triggered sometimes, this is not the place to be. Latin America can be problematic with the triggers. Why? Because it's extremely religious. Some of the state holidays are around religion. I'm not concerned. What can they do to me? They have nothing but racist ass and LARP King Uni, and I'll recycle stories. I'll get my stories out on large affair channels. I am a nut flower. Okay. Steve, what she did to you was just awful. Like what she did to Tina was awful. What she did to Sue Elliott was awful. What she did to me was awful. The she, of course, is Catherine I'm talking about now. So in Latin America, they have all kinds of crazy holidays that have to do with religion. Here, there's one called the Virgin of Los Angeles. It's near where we used to live in Coppay. It's a black Madonna statue that mysteriously showed up. There's all these little things around that, and they take off for like 3 or 4 days, and they're walking and crawling, going to the Virgin of Los Angeles. And that tricky Jesus, he is everywhere here. I see pictures of Jesus on the back of the bus. There's one out of the main road that's like, thank you, Jesus, for everything you've done. It is everywhere here. It's a heavily Catholic part of the world with extremely high beliefs. Unlike the States, where more and more people are becoming agnostic. And I mean, it's everywhere, even the non-Catholics. I had to laugh. I can't think of the guy's name. But this guy I know here who It's done some work for us. Showed up one day when my husband wasn't here. And one of the things, and he keeps throwing this out at us, he keeps trying to get me to join the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He gave me this book, Steps to Christ. It's the only thing he had that was in English, and his English is not good. My Spanish, if it's not buying something, it's terrible. So there was that. And I was nice enough to him, but I don't really want to go back. I don't want to go backwards to any of these places. Like I said, the churches here are pretty problematic in their own weird way. I wasn't raised religion. So they were able to brainwash me. Went to a few churches in my day. It wasn't for me. Don't need a church to believe. Scorpio, you're right. But do they have rock and roll? No, they don't have rock and roll church at Seventh-day Adventist. And I've never heard contemporary praise and worship called rock and roll church. Never, 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 never. I think she's just made that one up. And I struggle sometimes not to be triggered here with all the pictures of Jesus and everything else, even though I have my own spirituality and my own belief. I don't really need that in my face 24/7 here. And I just don't. I still think that Toad should have been a lead guitarist. He should have been. They should have welcomed him with open arms, because most of these places are struggling to find talented musicians to fill the ranks on the worship teams. My mom was Presbyterian. My father was raised Catholic. They left me and my sister to make up our own minds. I'm doing the same with my kids. Bliss is probably the smartest way to approach it. I, unfortunately, drug my kids into Quiverful, and they still have stuff they deal with on a regular basis because of that. And I'm to my eternal shame. I drug them into that. In my 30s even. I should have known better. I'd been an agnostic for many years. But they got me in, and now to this day, so I struggle not to be triggered when I run up across somebody giving me the come to Seventh-day Adventist Jesus, come to Catholic Jesus, come to whoever Jesus. Steve McRae, awesome. East Coast, Virginia. Artie Timberwolf, where are you from in Virginia? I lived in Virginia for over 30 years. Go lay down. TV speaking up for victims. Yeah, oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Steve, I always will, and you know that about me. I always will. The badger, huh? So long story short, most of the time I'm not triggered at all. But I have had some recent experiences at one of the churches here recently that has been not good. I've been triggered all over the place. When our friend fell down and broke her hip, more religious nonsense being triggering towards me. And it just never ends. It just never ends with all this weird stuff with some of these churches and how far they'll go. Thankfully, I haven't seen any soul-winning people coming to my door, and I haven't witnessed a youth ministry group coming here to do soul winning. Not in a long time. The naval base. Okay, I know where that's at. It's not too far from the King Neptune statue, is it? I used to love that King Neptune statue. It was one of my all-time favorites there in Virginia Beach. I used to go down there on a regular basis too. Only 2.5 hour ride, 2.5 hours to Baltimore, 2.5 hours, 3 hours down. So Virginia, just mad respect for me. I loved it when I lived there. Didn't love all the people, but I loved the beauty of Virginia. There were so many things. So I'm going to leave you guys with a terrible story about something I did. I'm kind of quasi ashamed. You know, I talk about Costa Rica a lot because I live here now, and I sometimes do Costa Rica content. And yeah, I am triggered sometimes by how praise Jesus everybody is here, and it just gets Baltimore bliss. Oh yeah, I'm looking at buying a place in Baltimore. It may happen. So I sometimes will giggle over the American tourists here because I lived in Germany, I lived here, I lived other places. And one of the things that I'm very careful about here and anywhere else in the world I've lived is don't be the ugly American. Don't be the ugly American tourist. I know a ton of people that are the ugly American tourist, and I forget what it's like until I run up against one. And I'm not even talking about the ultra rich that in high season are going up to the desk of the hotel going, "Pardon me, but can you do something about the wind? It's whipping sand into my family's beach vacation and ruining it." And it's like, lady, you just asked him about the wind. You just asked them to control the wind. I don't know what you think is going on here. So I laugh about that kind of tourism nonsense. I laugh about seeing golf cart accidents. I've seen a number of exotic ones. I saw one where they took the corner too quick and everybody fell out like bowling pins. Nobody was hurt, thank God. I saw another one where there was a guy who was super drunk that was in the back of his, and he was hanging on and jumping and doing things. And he fell off and he fell on the hood of my car and then bounced across the street. But he was so wasted, none of that had anything to do with him. So on Sunday, I'm going to set the stage. Asthma been bad. Asthma been crazy bad. Been so crazy bad, I decided to add Zyrtec on top of everything else that I'm taking. Sunday, my husband and I went to the grocery store. There's a pharmacy there. There's a secondhand bookstore. We had plans to visit all of those things. It does sound like something that the British might say. So we're there. We get in line at the grocery store. The line is like crazy. So my husband says, why don't you just go to the grocery? Why don't you just go off to the pharmacy, do your thing, and we can meet up at the secondhand bookstore? So I said, okay, yeah. Why don't we both stand in line? I'll go to the drugstore. So I left the grocery store and I started towards a handicap ramp because I have to have that wheelchair ramp because I don't have great balance. I use ramps, not steps now. So I'm at the very top of the ramp, and this American woman pushes me aside and goes around me. Okay. I told a little bit of this story on Twitter. She gets right in front of me. Her husband is right in front of her. He's pushing the cart and he's going like a turtle. He's clutching the cart and he's moving like do, 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 do. And I'm up there frustrated because I'm stuck behind turtles and I need to get to the drugstore. We get all the way to the bottom of the ramp and she shouts in English, "Hey, there's a pharmacy. I'm going to go get your Zyrtec." And I turn to her and say, "Hey, you're not going to be able to get Zyrtec here. They don't know what Zyrtec is there. You're going to have to ask them for," I think it's, without looking at the box, let me pull the box out. "You're going to have to ask them for cetirizine, because it's the same thing, but that's what you're going to have to ask for. They have no knowledge of anything that is Zyrtec. The cetirizine is going to be the thing." And I had it written down. I showed her. I said, "They also don't speak English in there, so you're going to need to use Spanish to get this. And you're going to need to be wearing a mask because the rule is here in Costa Rica, healthcare facilities, clinics, pharmacies, hospitals, you must mask. Rates are still very high here, so that's why in those circumstances they're going to make you mask." Well, sir, this lady went off the deep end at me. I started ranting and screaming about the pandemic being over and nobody masks and how it's a conspiracy to sell masks and to make us all weak and sick. And I'm looking at her because I had on my N95 because my asthma's been so bad. I was wearing my N95. And I'll wear that when the weather, when there are a lot of people around or there's peanut butter, or there's anything I'm allergic to, or the air is bad because a volcano has exploded. So I'm listening to her rant, and then she moves to the rant where she can't understand why nobody here speaks English. Java man, you're about to hear how it went. Go time. So she's ranting about how everybody should speak English here and blah, blah, blah. And she's running to her car to get a mask. Well, she emerges with this rumpled, crumpled, dirty mask that my used tissue looks better than. And have my hand on the doorknob of the pharmacy. I'm getting ready to go in. She starts yelling, I was here first. I was here first. I need to go ahead of you. And she starts running across the parking lot. And I just smile and just open the door and walk on in and go up to the counter and ask her, Masatira Zina, and ask it in Spanish, conclude the transaction. I buy the very last box of that in the drugstore. I cut her off from getting it altogether. So she's right behind me, fuming and screaming. And I got all the Zyrtec. I know this sounds like the world's pettiest revenge, but let me tell you something. I was walking out of there, clutching my drug, grinning beneath my mask, thinking, oh yeah, I did the baller thing. I did the gangster thing. I just went around her and took it all. I'm sure we will see this story on the next WOACB. I don't doubt it. And I'm normally not like that. Like I said, I turned her and told her the name of the drug. Usually in that circumstance, I will offer to go. I was about to offer to translate, to go in there with her and translate for her. But she started going nutso, and I just made the decision not to. And I would have split that box with her because that's the kind of person I am. But you push me, you go real slow, you start cussing me out and yelling about masks and stuff. You start screeching about wanting people to only speak English to you in a Spanish-speaking country. And then you yell at me that you were first in line. You should go around me. And I'm kind of like, bless your little heart. And I will grab the last box. I'm winter in South Carolina, and it's always my best behavior because they think NYers they do think that, and it's not necessarily true. And there is nothing funnier to me than when somebody from somewhere else is rude to a Southerner, because the Southerner will smile and get revenge in the best way they know how. So part of me feels bad, like I shouldn't have done that. And then there's the other part of me that says, oh yeah, standing up against tourists. I didn't have to wear a mask to the whole human obedience test pandemic. Artie Timberwolf, I wore one before the pandemic. I'm wearing one post-pandemic. I have N95s. I have very nice N95s. I have to wear them for my asthma when the asthma is bad, when the volcano was exploded, or someone's got awful cologne, or they've mopped with Pine Sol, or any number of things that I'm super duper allergic to around me to keep from having asthma. The N95 does the job. And I can tell you something. I was pissed off through the entire pandemic how people who had no genuine need of an N95 were ordering them left and right. It made it hard for me to order one. But still, I was gracious enough to say, okay, have all your N95s. I will keep trying to order them and keep reusing. All right, Timberwolf, yeah, that's why I use them, because of that. And that's why when it started, do you remember when the pandemic first started, they said, don't mask? That was a huge mistake. I said at the time, I said, ooh, no. Should probably be masking. Because if this can be, oh, no, I'm not okay, Star Lily. I'm rambling as it is. My asthma's been really bad. And it's because Rica de Vea exploded. Well, not exploded. It just released a little bit of ash and plume between the 8th of September and the 16th. So we're just now getting that here on the coastline. And when that happens, I'm like falling out on the floor sick. I would wear a mask if I'm spray painting or something like that, but I wear a respirator though. I have one of those respirators, and I used it recently to paint the cabina bedroom just to see if I could paint with a respirator and not get sick. And I got barely sick at all. So respirators are a really, really, really good thing. Java Man, I ordered mine. The last time I was in the States, I got a big stock of them. So I always have to have the N95. It is what it is. I thought the fake masks, when we had to wear them, didn't get brainwashed with that either. Well, it depends. It depends upon. I was directly exposed. I think my husband and I sat down and figured out like 7 or 8 times. But I also know that people with mast cell like myself very seldom contract this. I know people with mast cell who have, but very few that have. Very few. They think because some of the drugs they're on would deal with something like that in one hell of a hurry. And I think that's what it is. The earth is wobbling. I swear the earth is wobbling. We have earthquakes here frequently, little tiny tremors. So it's nothing to keep you from here. Java man, you're right about that. Sometimes I wear my N95 beneath a cotton mask because I have a ton of cotton masks that I made that I was using during the pandemic too. Yeah, I didn't catch it either. So I'm not sure why some people can be face to face and don't catch it. Like I said, I went looking and saw they said that the people on the drugs I'm in tend to not catch it much. So knock on Costa wood. I am hoping that that is the truth of the matter. And I managed to get through this without it. I'm fully vaxxed and boosted. And I know there are people that don't like the vaccines. I have no problem with them because I understand that the methodology of how they came up with them, because it's the same thing as biologic medicines, which I were on. I was on biologics for 8.5 years for the mast cell. We had an earthquake here in Wisconsin about 10 years ago. Arctic Timberwolf, we had one in Virginia, a bad one, about 10 years ago. Scorpio Joe, is your daughter better? That is terrible. I hate seeing anybody's kids get that. Got the Omicron update last week. I'm supposed to get mine soon. I have not gotten a vaccine since 1975. She had a runny nose for 2 days and went back to work in 3 days. That must be nice to be able to shake something off that easily. I think I had it early on. I think I had it like in February of 2020 because my daughter came here from DC to visit me for like 10 days. Spent a lot of that time laying on my sofa because she was just sick as a dog with some kind of upper respiratory thing that left her without the ability to taste or smell. They gave her a Z-Pack and steroids, and it took her a while to recover from it. And then right after she left, I ended up with it and no taste and no smell, and got over it after about a week or so. Well, that's awesome. You guys don't get sick. I could use a spell of that, but the drugs I take, I tend to kill things in a hurry. Anything that's respiratory usually goes away in a hurry, and I think that's why I'm not catching it from all these people right in my face before. Okay, you guys, I'm starting to ramble. I need to go. So if you have triggers from various religious things, then this is one of those places you're going to need to work on your triggers. My friend Cindy believes in MDMR, I think it is, therapy. I took it a couple times and it wasn't useful for me, but I can see how that might help some people. So there's things that we work on about it. 14 shots, Java man. I didn't get that many, and I get vaccinated for everything. I get vaccinated for pneumonia when I need to. I get vaccinated for the flu because I had the flu one year and it was awful. I keep up with that stuff. Not everybody will. Not everybody needs to. Everybody has to make that decision themselves. But let me throw a little tidbit about Costa Rica out. If you're coming here to live with children, they require vaccination. They're hell on you if you're anti-vax here because they believe everybody needs to be vaccinated. I'm waiting for them to make a law saying that COVID vaccinations are mandatory, but so far they haven't. Vaccinations are mandatory and homeschooling is forbidden. It is what it is. Okay, you guys, thanks for watching. Love you guys. Take care. Don't fall for this whole Chris Hansen and Spiracy nonsense. It's crazy. Kentucky girl, I just have to stay in here, take my drugs, and wait until the sulfurized air passes, and I'll be fine.